This week on Healthy Living, a look at household air pollution, a forgotten health crisis. And what can be done to improve indoor air pollution, an expert weighs in. Plus, can your indoor plant purify the air you breathe? The answer in true or false. Finally, researchers keep track of coronavirus infections in sewage. These stories and more in this edition of Healthy Living. Hello, I'm Lina Khmoudou. Thank you for joining us on Healthy Living. Kerosene, wood, charcoal, and coal are used by many people around the world for cooking and heating. Experts say these cooking methods can generate high indoor smoke levels and contribute to high levels of home air pollution. This is a serious problem in poorly ventilated houses. Over 3.8 million people die prematurely each year from illnesses related to household air pollution, including pneumonia, stroke, and lung cancer, according to the World Health Organization. The WHO calls it the world's largest single environmental health risk. Most victims are people in low-income countries who often do not have access to clean fuels for cooking. Women and young children are particularly vulnerable. Let's go to Nigeria, where most rural areas' lack of access to clean energy for cooking is continuing to expose women to the harmful effects of cooking with firewood. Nigerian government said more than 90,000 women and children are dying annually from smoke and other complications from firewood. VOA Hausa Alassane Bala has the report from Abuja.
Sa'adatu, a resident of Paduma, a village in the outskirts of Nigeria's capital Abuja, is making effort to start fire in her traditional firewood stove to cook for the family. It is part of her daily routines. Firewood is her only source of energy for cooking, despite the health hazards associated with it. The process for her includes the use of kerosene and plastic waste to get the firewood burning, with the blowing smoke being inhaled not only by her alone, but also other members of the family.
There are women in this community with some health problems, and when they visit hospitals to be diagnosed, they are told their illness is due to long-term inhalation of smoke while cooking.
Saadatu is one of the thousands of Nigerian women who solely depend on firewood for cooking. Health experts say smoke from the burning wood and plastic waste is responsible for most cases of chest pain, headache, cancer, and reproductive problems among women in northern Nigeria.
When someone inhales smoke coming from burning plastic, it affects the respiratory system and causes many health problems. And after a long period of exposure, the smoke can cause lung cancer.
The smoke from cooking with firewood also has adverse effects on the environment. Nigerian environment officials say they are working to educate people about such hazards.
We are trying our best as an agency to enlighten people on the dangers of using firewood to cook because of the smoke. But the major challenge is most of those using this method are in rural areas and are living in poverty. They can't even see clean cooking energy, let alone to buy it.
The minister lamented that 70% of Nigeria's population depends solely on firewood for their energy needs for cooking and heating. Despite the risks, however, women like Saadatu will continue to use firewood for cooking due to lack of accessibility and affordability of clean cooking energy in Nigeria's rural areas.
Dr. Yubrine Moraa Gachemba is an internal medicine physician at Nairobi Hospital in Kenya. She tells us more about household air pollution and what can be done.
So we are able to see the cumulative effect of this air pollution, indoor air pollution that happens to our mothers. I'll tell you for a fact, there's so many women, African women, that are seen now that have what we call COPD, which is like chronic obstructive airway disease. they're presenting later on, and we know it's because the risk is primarily what they were using to cook throughout their life. So maybe there's that aspect of more longevity now, so we're making better diagnosis, but there's also the aspect of now we are able to make the diagnosis. We have the instruments. So besides the common respiratory illnesses like asthma, COPD, chronic bronchitis, we are seeing more allergic airway diseases because of the exposure to the particles that are in the biomass that we're exposed to. Right from restrictive lung disease to obstructive lung disease, we are seeing more of that. But also, there's this propensity more to being in an enclosed space and no good circulation. That we are seeing other organs being affected, right to the risk of them having coronary artery disease. There is a link between this chronic indoor airway pollution and just some heart diseases like cardiomyopathies. That even this airway pollution is not just from the smoke. You see, there are other things like chemicals that are used in the granary where people would sleep in the granary. So that pollution from insecticide, pesticide that are being used right into the plants and the pollens that are there, and even aflatoxin exposure, and people are inhaling it. So yes, there's smoke and these other things, but now we are seeing more of a propensity of the women and children being more at risk because of just how the African setup. The population that presents more, and maybe because of risk health-seeking behavior, is the women. Also, exposure to some of those byproducts of combustion can actually increase the risk of cancers. Let's say some plastics or what being burnt indoors and causing some pollution. It can actually, eventual continuous exposure can result to some increased risk of some particular cancers, particularly the ones that are respiratory. And the combustion process that goes on and you do it continuously will actually be increasing the risk, not only of carbon monoxide poisoning, but in the long term, you're really causing some other things. Most importantly is to just seeking, and I think a lot of non-governmental organizations have been trying to encourage the seeking of alternative fuel in terms of cooking modalities in our little villages in the remote areas, so that people are using less of the firewood and more of the more modern way of cooking. But I think just having the awareness and people maybe just being aware that this can actually eventually bring me some issues, I think that's where we should start from. And also just putting in place things like more rural electrification, where now people will be using alternative sources of even lighting. So all those modalities together with public awareness and sensitization, and making sure that we have more screening so that people are more aware of these diseases and more accessible to care early before the disease is more progressed and more fatal.
Indoor plants look great and are a nice addition inside your house. But some people believe one benefit of a household plant is its ability to purify the air. Is it true or false? Well, according to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, among other things, carbon dioxide and volatile organic compounds can be found in some of the items and materials within our houses, and all have an impact on air quality. Through the process of photosynthesis, plants convert the carbon dioxide we exhale and remove gases from the air through a process called absorption. Therefore, plants can absorb harmful gases through the pores in their leaves, filtering and cleaning the air. On the other hand, whether the plants must be put in the bedroom has been a reason for debate. Some experts suggest removing plants from the bedroom when sleeping, as there is no light at night, which cannot enable plants to process photosynthesis. Autism, a neurodevelopmental disorder, often is misdiagnosed and all too often poorly perceived. But for several years, a center in Côte d'Ivoire has offered supportive care to young people. Dance therapy is making a difference. Yassine CEO reports for VOA Africa.
At this social center for children with special needs, the school day starts with a lesson in choreography. The students enrolled here range in age from 3 to 22, but faced with the rhythm and their teacher, Matthew Kouadio, all are equal and want to learn. This professional is today one of few dance therapists in the country. With 2 sessions per week, it allows these vulnerable children, generally poorly regarded in Ivorian society, to accept their disability for the time of a dance.
La danse-thérapie est un bain sonore.
Dance therapy is sound, rhythmic, and a transmission of positive waves. This allows the children to be balanced. We work on movement and expression, and therefore they can express themselves freely without constraint.
Dance allows these children to take full control of their bodies and movements. Those who are often marginalized together can create social ties.
L'objectif, c'est le lien social.
The objective is not the technique, but the social bond, the well-being and valuing these people and their health. In short, how through the choreography we can help a child to develop their motor skills.
Each of the nearly 90 youngsters registered here gets an individualized plan following assessment and diagnosis. The center receives little, if any, government aid. It relies on registration fees and donor support.
The objective of the center is, first of all, independence and communication. When they arrive here, we teach them hello, thank you, goodbye, the basics. And when we see that, we will see their capacity for social integration. Some come out quickly, others it's slower, and it takes years. The curriculum is adapted to the child.
That specialized support gladdens parents like Celestine. She has seen her 15-year-old son build independence since coming to the center. She's also the president of the Parents Association, and it was difficult to find treatment for Ivory Coast youngsters with disabilities.
If this center did not exist, I would have continued to do as before. At first, I went to an occupational therapist, and it was quite expensive. Speech therapists and other things. Everything is more expensive than being in a center like here.
The director says he hopes to relocate the current center to a larger site to accommodate more children and to build a second center so that children with different needs always have a place to dance.
Researchers are using an evolving monitoring system to track signs of coronavirus in sewage, which they say could potentially capture brewing infections. Here is more.
The stinky stuff that dwells underneath the Michigan State University campus is no longer just simply waste. It has become a public health tool. Colleges across the U.S. that are grappling with the coronavirus are testing sewage for the presence of genetic material from the virus.
It's being used on campus as early warning and communication. So to let the students know that in their dorm, there's virus excretion, even if they don't have cases.
Experts say it can be an inexpensive way to monitor people who may not even know they are sick yet.
So to be able to detect an asymptomatic or prior to clinical test positive individual, right, through the sewage surveillance program is important to avoid major events or major health crisis issues in that facility or building or a dorm, etc.
The Troy, Michigan-based company partnered with Auckland University to set up a laboratory at the school to test wastewater samples for the presence of the virus. Researchers said the results can't yet reliably show how many infected people live in a community, but they can indicate if that number is rising or falling. And that indication can arrive days before such trends show up by standard testing or hospitalizations.
I mean, after all, we're all biological beings. Really, it's not much different than a blood test. When you go to the bathroom, you're shedding virus. And you could be asymptomatic, but yet you continue to shed the virus.
Miller and other officials hope the lessons learned from the sewage testing efforts for the coronavirus can be applied to future health concerns.
For the latest news and coverage on the coronavirus, stay connected to Voice of America at voanews.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Linor Moudou. That's our show for today. Until next time, stay well and strive to make every day a healthy day.